Hey folks, today we're going to go ahead and talk about the subject of hair loss shampoos. It's a topic I've addressed in video format before, but today I want to talk about a very specific one that I have a personal history with called Regenpure DR. And Regenpure DR is one of the many fancy shampoos that is marketed for hair loss. And there's a lot of shampoos that market themselves as being like beneficial for hair loss. And of course, they're all universally scamful. I wouldn't trust a single one of them. However, in the case of Regenpure DR, as well as similar products like Revita, and I think Lipogain also makes a Ketoconazole shampoo, is that the active ingredient does have some science behind it, which gives it some merit, which might justify its claims as a hair loss shampoo. And that's very, very appealing to a lot of people because for all of us, pretty much, hopefully for all of us, it means not adding any additional inconvenience into our routine. Because, we all shower, most of us use shampoos, and if we're going to use a shampoo, we might as well just use a shampoo that's going to help with hair loss, right? I mean, great. The problem is, though, is that even though the active ingredient ketoconazole, which is found in Nizoral shampoo or Nizoral cream, does have some science behind it. It's an antifungal ingredient, but it can be used off-label as an anti-androgen. The problem is the mechanism of delivery in a shampoo format, meaning that it's not going to stay on the scalp long enough to cause any significant penetration in order for it to work effectively as an anti-androgen. Now, ketoconazole is a pretty strong anti-androgen. In fact, it's used orally in surgeries, actually, to prevent people from getting spontaneous erections if they're undergoing like genital surgery for whatever reason. Maybe they're getting maybe they have testicular cancer, maybe they are getting a penile prosthesis. I mean, who the hell knows? But anyways, we know that it works as an anti-androgen. However, if you put something on your scalp for 5 minutes, that's not going to be enough for any kind of substantial absorption. And that's why I ultimately concluded that I don't think Nizoral is a very effective treatment for hair loss, even though there are studies that show that using Nizoral in conjunction with finasteride, not by itself, but in conjunction with finasteride, is more effective than using Nizoral alone. And it was a Japanese study, a pretty obscure one that was released a long time ago, and had a pretty small sample size, but it seems pretty compelling to a lot of people. So, worst case scenario, it can't hurt. And ketoconazole, even if it isn't an effective hair loss treatment, it's a pretty good treatment for dandruff in some cases, especially if your dandruff is caused by inflammation. So I use Nizoral every now and then, maybe once on a blue moon, once every 2 weeks or so, to treat my recurring dandruff issues, and I think it works pretty well in that regard. But having ceased usage of it for many, many months and even years, I can say safely that it didn't affect my hair loss or hair growth one way or the other, and I've been using hair loss treatments for many, many years, probably over a decade now by this point. So, getting back to the subject at hand, Regenpure is one of the few shampoos that's marketed as a hair loss shampoo that also shares the active ingredient of ketoconazole. And I think it's probably like 1% ketoconazole, kind of like Nizoral 1%, because if it were 2%, it would probably have to be prescription only. And it's also important to note that the studies done on people using Nizoral were using the 2% variant, but so it's likely just 1%. Otherwise, it would have to be a prescription product rather than over the counter. And along with ketoconazole are a bunch of other ingredients which I think are either worthless, maybe slightly beneficial, or benign. And it seems appealing to a lot of people, especially people who are new to hair loss, to have like a hair loss shampoo that also has a lot of other supposedly beneficial ingredients in it. And I bought into the hype way back in the day. So in the early 2010s, I was actually paid to promote the product because I had a scene on hair loss forums, and I thought, well, why the hell not? I was being given an offer by the company to promote this product on social media and on also various forums. So I took the deal, and that's one of the few things in life I wish I could take back, because I can say, without beating out around the bush any further, that this is a crap product. I don't want to make it seem confusing at all in any way. I don't want to come across as ambiguous. This is not a product I recommend in any capacity. And I'm actually mad that I recommended it, because the company actually lied about the product's ingredients on their page back in the day. I know that they've revised it since, and they don't lie in their marketing anymore. But one particular ingredient they lied about, which made me really angry, is that they said is that it has emu oil in it. And emu oil, as the name implies, is the fat that comes from the emu bird. And it's put in the product probably to appeal to people who are into new age woo, because emu oil is basically a snake oil. It doesn't do anything. However, there are a lot of proponents in the new age medicine movement who claim it does a lot of things, including hair loss. So I think what the company is hoping is that people will look up the ingredients, they'll see emu oil, and somebody who isn't well educated may come to the conclusion that that is an ingredient that's helpful for hair loss. But since they said that there were no animal products in their shampoo, I promoted it under the auspice that, I was promoting a vegan product when it clearly is not a vegan product. And that was offensive to me. And it's also so fucking unnecessary because, one person can argue that emu oil is decent as a moisturizer, but you don't have to use emu oil. They could have used jojoba oil, and jojoba oil is a plant-based oil that is most chemically similar to the sebum that our hair produces naturally, so it's more effective anyways. So I promoted it, and I also used it for a little while, and I used it in hopes that I wouldn't get the same negative effects I got with Nizoral. And what are those negative effects? So let me take a few steps back and go over that. Nizoral, for all its benefits in terms of fighting dandruff, is not a shampoo that can be used very frequently because it's very, very harsh. And what I mean by that is that it just nukes the hair. It fries it out. It makes it look really dry and straw-like. And I thought, okay, well, Regenpure DR has all these fancy ingredients and moisturizers in it, so maybe it's a little bit better. But on the contrary, and I don't know exactly why this is the case, but I think Regenpure DR is even worse. I have never had my hair look quite as atrocious ever in my life as when I used Regenpure DR. I mean, I'm trying to think of a good example, but if you ever saw like classical pictures of Albert Einstein, with the really frizzy, wild hair, that's what would happen. My hair would look would puff up, and I have like naturally fine hair, so it would make it very easy to see the scalp, especially under a light. So I'd have to use like tons of hairspray, tons of gel, and I hate using that shit. I don't like having to use any hairspray unless like I'm putting some additional product like Topic in my hair. So that was a real big pain in the ass. And even after I stopped using it, it took a long while for me to actually get my hair back to its previous texture. And when I used Nizoral, one thing I've always done to counter the dryness is that I'd always take like a little bit of jojoba oil, and I highly recommend this. Just take like, maybe a quarter of a teaspoon and put it in like the little dab that you're about to like put on your hair, and then just lather it in. And then afterwards, like use a little bit of jojoba oil by itself or in the conditioner that you're using. Just add it in and let that sit for another 5 minutes. And that really does a good job of countering the dryness. Now, it's not quite good enough that you can use it every day. I mean, unless I guess you have really, really greasy hair. But it allowed me to use Nizoral about 5 times a week, although I would never do that today. But I was doing it back then because I was doing it under the idea that Nizoral was an effective hair loss treatment. So if you do want to use a Ketoconazole treatment, an alternative to using shampoos is to use the cream. The cream is better because it will actually stay on the scalp longer, and I haven't actually used Nizoral cream myself, but I do have a friend who uses it, and he actually had a hair transplant. He actually had 2 hair transplants, and he has maintained his hair, his non-transplanted hair, for several years now, and it doesn't look like he's lost any progress. And I don't know whether or not that's just good genetics. Maybe, it doesn't mean that his hair won't lose ground later on, but maybe it's possible that the Nizoral cream that he applies to his scalp has helped him maintain his non-transplanted hair for all these years. So I think that if I were to rely on Nizoral or Ketoconazole, I would use the Nizoral cream because you can leave that on for like several hours at a time, and chances are, of course, you get much better absorption doing that than you would just like lathering something in your hair and leaving it on for 5 minutes. So anyways, that's all I'll say about like Ketoconazole itself. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the other ingredients in Regenpure DR. It's a pretty long list, so I'm going to go over them, go over the inoffensive ones, and just give my opinion about whether or not they help or hurt. And so, of course, the first ingredient is water. And the next one is aloe vera gel. Now, you may think that's good because, that's the second ingredient. Aloe vera is a pretty good anti-inflammatory. But, even if aloe vera helps, I think there's just so much other shit in the product that it doesn't really do anything to like combat like the negative cosmetic side effects that the shampoo causes. So, maybe it's fighting inflammation a little bit, but if your hair looks so bad, it's barely going to even matter in my opinion. So it has I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, but it's basically a variant of sodium lauryl sulfate, and that's just a foaming agent. It's not a really big deal. I mean, a lot of people like say that SLS is like really, really bad for the scalp. It's like you see a lot of like natural hippie shampoos market themselves as being like sodium lauryl sulfate free. That doesn't really matter to me. I haven't had any bad experiences with sodium lauryl sulfate. If anything, I think abstaining from that in your shampoos is just a way for people to sell more shampoo to you, because I've noticed that with the shampoos that don't have that foaming agent, I have to use a shitload more of it in order for it to actually get a good lather in, so I just end up wasting a lot of shampoo, and of course that leads to plastic waste since you're throwing out the shampoo bottle, although hopefully you recycle it. But anyways, I'm not going to go over every single ingredient because, some of them are just basically like, binding agents and, like things that you'd find in any shampoo. Okay, so then there's ketoconazole, there's niacin, and, the idea behind niacin is that it promotes the blood flow theory, and the blood flow theory is this debunked theory that hair loss is somehow linked to blood flow, which is not true. I know Alpacin is a caffeine shampoo that kind of promotes the same idea. And it's total nonsense, because if blood flow was really linked to hair loss, then we'd see people with hypertension get more hair loss. We'd see like women lose their hair at a near equal rate to men. But that's not the case, because it's not blood flow that causes hair loss, it's androgens that cause hair loss. And I'll tell you, there are plenty of people who have terrible blood pressure, they have hypertension, hypercholesterolemia, yet they still have full heads of hair. And conversely, you see people who are at the absolute pinnacle of good health, people who exercise every day, eat a very clean diet, very low in saturated fat, very low in cholesterol, very low in sugar, and they're still completely bald. And that's because it's just how genetically predisposed you are to androgens, specifically DHT, and to a lesser extent testosterone. So they're just basically putting that ingredient in there so gullible dumb fucks will look it up and say, oh yeah, niacin, that's good for hair loss because of the blood flow theory. And that's not true. That's basically the equivalent of like the Flat Earth Society's take on hair loss. So it's complete nonsense. Don't even pay attention to that. Okay, it has wheat proteins in it, and I guess that's because some people think, oh, like the hair, it's made out of protein, so if you put protein on your hair, it's going to cause hair growth. That's the equivalent of saying that if I eat an eyeball, it's going to improve my vision. And this kind of goes to like, people who promote like collagen consumption for like, promoting like joint health or something like that. I mean, just because like you put something in your body or you apply something to your body, that doesn't mean it's going to be absorbed on the area you want to affect. I mean, in the case of like dietary collagen, for instance, it's just going to break down into amino acids in your gut. Or in the case of wheat proteins, it's not going to do jack shit. You're just going to wash it off. So it's just there to make the shampoo look appealing to people who don't know any better. All right. And okay, so it has ascorbic acid in it. That's vitamin C. I mean, you can just get your vitamin C from like from your food. I don't know why you have to put it on your shampoo. Of course, there's emu oil again. And emu oil, it's a cruel product. They have to kill the emu bird to do it. There's really horrible emu farms in Australia where the birds are basically just tortured, and it's such a shame because they're being killed for no good fucking reason at all. They're being killed to appeal to new age idiots who think that emu oil promotes hair growth, and it's also used as like a new age remedy for other things as well. I think people say it's like good like as a dietary supplement. It increases libido. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some idiots out there who say it even helps you regrow limbs. I mean, if you look at, I mean, I'm speaking facetiously, but there have been people who have said that about like new age health products before, like the acai berry. The acai berry is kind of like the bone broth of the 2000s, meaning that there's a bunch of unsubstantiated health claims about it, and there were literally people back then who said that it would actually cause you to regrow limbs. So I'm actually getting a little bit off topic right there, so let's get back to what I was talking about. Okay, so they mentioned oh, actually, this is interesting. It turns out it does have jojoba seed oil in it. However, that's listed below emu oil. But I don't know if it actually had jojoba seed oil in it before, like when I was using it. I don't know if that's an added ingredient, but this ingredient list looks exactly the same as from what I remember. And jojoba oil is a very good moisturizer, but I'll just tell you, like, even though this does have jojoba oil in it, they're not using enough of it to counter the dryness that Regenpure DR causes. It is very, very harsh. So if anything, I think they should have put jojoba oil up a little bit higher, maybe in front of the emu oil, and maybe that could have countered some of the dryness. Or better yet, just don't use this product and just go ahead and use jojoba oil and Nizoral if you really, really want to use a Ketoconazole shampoo, since that's the best moisturizer out there, and you get substantially more of it just by buying jojoba oil independently rather than than having it mixed in with the shampoo smorgasbord. Okay. It has menthol in it, and I guess that's kind of to give it a scent. And I'll tell you, the smell of the shampoo is really, really bad. And like, it was kind of like if you dropped a breath mint in an asshole and then a cat shit it out. That's what it smelled like. I remember I was embarrassed to use it. I actually replaced it with this coffee smelling shampoo, and it was like light and day. It smelled so much better, and I was so glad to be done with it once the bottle was finally good and expired and like depleted, because the only reason I was using it is because for one, I was promoting the product, and also because, you know, I actually believed that maybe it would work, but of course I know better now. It has hydrogenated castor oil in it. Now, I've heard castor oil like being talked about as like as a hair loss treatment before. I mean, I haven't looked too much into this. I'd be very surprised if there are any like clinical trials or in vitro data to back up the use of hydrogenated castor oil in the treatment of hair loss. It's not it's not hormonal in any way, and you know. Castor oil, it's oil derived from like one of the most toxic plants on the planet, the castor bean, which is also used to make ricin. I mean, I'm not comparing the two, but the only use I know of with castor oil is that it's used as a diuretic, and it also tastes really fucking bad, and I don't know if it could actually do anything as far as like, you know, hair loss goes. And let's see. Okay, it has saw palmetto in it as well. Yeah, and I passed over that one too. So yeah, saw palmetto, that's kind of like what they call nature's finasteride. And to its credit, there are studies that show it does have an effect on the alpha-5 reductase enzyme. So it may work kind of like a weak finasteride. However, it's important to note that most of the studies done on the actual treatment, on the sorry, I had a freaking brain fart there. On the goddamn saw palmetto are actually done on the prostate. And because of that, I mean, that doesn't mean that it doesn't work on the scalp, but, you know, take that for what it is. But, you know, I used saw palmetto in the past, and, you know, I took really, really large doses of it. And I used it both before I used finasteride. I used it, and I tried to use it as an adjunct treatment in conjunction with finasteride. And I can safely say it didn't really do a thing for me. And I used very, very large doses of it. I mean, I'd go through, like, you know, a bottle per week, and it was like one of those, like, 30-tablet bottles, so you can go ahead and do the math there. And so I think, you know, maybe it helps a little bit, but I think it's the equivalent of trying to fight a fire with a water dropper. So it might help, but it's just not strong enough. And also, I'm talking about oral saw palmetto. I'm not talking about topical saw palmetto. I don't think there's even any evidence that the saw palmetto that's applied topically in a shampoo format, especially when it's left on for just 5 minutes, is going to be enough to penetrate the scalp. So, you know, if you want to use saw palmetto, I'd recommend just using saw palmetto. You don't have to like take it in a topical format in this product. And you know, there's a few other things in it too. You have like polysorbate 80, which is a pretty good cleaning agent. And you also have like some colorings like blue 1, although I remember it looked more like green to me. And you know, other than that, that's pretty much it. There's nothing else really worthwhile to mention here. And oh yeah, it has spearmint oil in it too. So I guess like it's that kind of adds to the whole breath mint mixed with ass scent flavor it has to it. So, anyways, I wanted to go ahead and just cover this real quick. And yeah, I give it my thumbs down. I wouldn't even give it a 1 out of 10. I'd give it a 0 out of 10 because, you know, it doesn't actually do anything useful. All it does is that it just separates fools from their money. And it's also not just bad, but it's also offensive because it includes a lot of new age ingredients in it that are designed to appeal to gullible people and promote this alternative medicine dogma, while at the same time also trying to have this veneer of legitimacy with ketoconazole in it, since it does have some legitimate science behind it. And I've given my opinions about ketoconazole before. I mean, I think it is good for dandruff, but if you want to use ketoconazole, even if you are sold on the notion that it actually is good for hair loss, and you know, I know bodybuilders who use it, and I know some people who even like swear by it, even like taking steroid cycles, and they say that, oh, ketoconazole help them. You know, I'm skeptical about whether or not those folks even had male pattern baldness to begin with. However, even if you do want to use ketoconazole, there are much better ways to use it than this crap product. And it's also very overpriced, I have to mention. It's $25, and you know, that doesn't include the shipping. I mean, chances are, unless you live in New York, where I think the headquarters are, you're not going to actually be able to find it in stores, so you're probably going to end up spending more than $30 on this piece of shit product. And yeah, so avoid it. It's an ineffective product. The added ingredients don't do anything to it. They just drive up the price. It is not. They've lied in their marketing before by saying it's not tested on animals. It's actually or it doesn't have any animal byproducts. It does. It does have animal products in it, and so it's not a cruelty-free product by any stretch of the imagination. And yeah, so. And you know, there's other products like it as well, like, you know, Revita and Lipogain, but like I said before, but they're mostly the same. So everything I said for this product applies to those as well. Now, I haven't used the Lipogain shampoo, but I have used Revita before, and I know that has emu oil in it as well, so I would never buy it again. But that's basically the same thing, although I can say that that probably wasn't as bad for my scalp as Regenpure, and to its credit, Revita at least has a nice smell to it. It kind of smells like orange juice. So if you really, really wanted to try one of the fancy Ketoconazole shampoos, I mean, I'd tell you you're crazy. You should just use Ketoconazole, but I'd probably choose that over Lipogain. Oh yeah, and the packaging sucks as well. The bottle just leaks like crazy. I don't know if they've updated it since then, but it has kind of like a clear plastic cap on top of like a regular shampoo bottle. And if you put it like upside down, like if you're trying to get like some extra shampoo at the bottom out, it's just going to leak out all over the place. I remember there was like this like layer that was like kind of caked on my tub. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Regenpure DR. So anybody who's asking about it, and people have asked about it before, now you know my opinion. I hope you have found it useful, and you know, I'll be back with more content soon. But hopefully, people who have thought about taking Regenpure DR, if you've gotten anything out of this video, I hope I've talked you out of using it and buying it. Take care.